Welcome to episode 5 of All the Horrible Streams. That's right. This is All the Horrible Things, episode 5, where we're discussing which streaming platforms are the best for horror.
Yeah.
We've kind of gone through all the different platforms and amalgamated what they're offering and what Rotten Tomato scores they're getting as well.
Correct. And there's a lot out there. I mean, this is the golden age of new horror.
It is the golden age, but at the same time, I felt like there should have been more. I mean, granted, I haven't seen a lot of them.
Yes.
But especially with some of these platforms, the offerings are slim.
Yeah, I'll agree with you. And I would say that a lot of these platforms got to get their act together because horror is such a great, genre that fans will flock to that your streaming service.
And it's oftentimes cheaper than other productions, too.
Sure.
And as we talked about before, you don't necessarily need big names for horror.
No.
As long as you have a good concept and potential creatures or whatnot. But we came up with this new system of determining how scary something is, because some of these shows definitely qualify as horror, but might be a little heavy in the drama. Mm-hmm. So we were thinking, when you watch something, you often ask yourself, is it spine tingling? Did it send shivers up your spine? So, considering the human spine and how it has 33 bones initially, but I did recently learn today that a lot of those fuse together, and then in adults, it kind of goes down to 26 bones, which I found kind of interesting. Man, so the 26 vertebrae in the spine, we're going to do a scale up to 33, the initial number of spinal bones. And in case you're unaware, it's kind of broken into different systems. You got the C-7 bones, which are the top bones.
Some of my favorite bones.
We had discussed whether or not we should do the ranking from, does the chills get sent down your spine or up your spine? And what's considered the lowest or the highest? But what'd we go with?
Well, like you were saying earlier, chills run up your spine. And
up your spine.
And the other stuff is the butt stuff.
The butt stuff, also known as the coccyx, COCCYX. I love it when they have a Y and an X next to each other in a word. You know that's it's going to be pretty shitty.
It's going to be a terrible word and not good for spelling bees.
Exactly. So we're going to not arbitrarily, but roughly guesstimate what we would put it on our spinal columns and how spine tingling it is as we go along. And kind of highlight particular shows in these platforms. But why don't you start us off with ultimately the coccyx of platforms, our crappiest offerer of horror.
Yeah, our crappiest platform for horror right now is Peacock.
Yeah.
Not
offering much at all.
Not offering much at all. And it's crazy. Certainly not offering new content, but not streaming enough of some of the other classics. At least CBS has some classic TV shows that streamed like during the 60s, like your Twilight Zones.
That's true. Exactly. Even the newer episodes of the Twilight Zones.
Right. But we were saying that we really only found one show on Peacock that was an original program for NBC, which was Grimm.
Right.
And I personally never really got into Grimm. It it has horror elements, but it really leans more towards the fairy tale side of things.
Oh, I see.
And I would say it really wanted to be Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
It wanted to be Buffy, but it then was a little too much Once Upon a Time-y, right? From ABC.
Yes.
It couldn't. It found a balance that nobody wanted ultimately between these two shows.
Now, I do believe that people do genuinely like Grimm.
Oh, I know they do. They do. Perhaps those people weren't into Buffy or previous offerings, and then it then provided them for the first time what we so selfishly enjoyed earlier. But I tried it a couple times, and I'm not going to say I got through more than 1 or 2 episodes, so it's not really fair for me to poo-poo it.
Yeah, no poo-poo.
But I don't got time for it at this point. I don't think I'm going to go back to Grimm right now.
Yeah, I certainly don't think you should do that when there's so many other platforms with so many other things to offer.
Right.
in the way of horror.
And that being said, we should give Peacock a little bit of love because they have some of the best comedies, and a lot of those comedy series have amazing Halloween episodes.
That's true. That is true.
So,
The Office alone has some really great Halloween episodes.
I completely agree. I mean, Dwight as the Joker is can't surpass that.
Oh man,
And
why so
hilarity
serious?
and horror.
Yeah.
All right, so Peacock's at the bottom of the pack.
Yeah, get your act together, Peacock. Join the race, please.
There's nothing horrible about Peacock right now, other than their lack of horror.
Right.
Next up, second to last, entering the S bones, S1 through 5 on our vertebrae, is Stars.
Which has one of my favorite horror programs ever.
True.
Ash versus the Evil Dead.
Ash versus the Evil Dead, which has some amazing gore in it and some seriously badass effects. But when we're talking about Spine Tingler, does it scare you?
No.
You get scared by it?
No, it really plays into Sam Raimi's horror comedy side of things.
Right.
You know, it's certainly not as scary as the first Evil Dead. It's more fun like Evil Dead 2. And
I totally agree with you on that. I feel like that the comedy is almost more important than the horror.
Yes.
And the characterization is so dynamic compared to the plot.
Sure.
You know, the characters are fun and the plot is pretty static.
Sure. The thing I would say, though, that they really nailed was the length. And, you know, deciding to make these episodes only around half an hour, you were able to move that story along. Whereas you have shows like The Walking Dead that has some scary moments, but you get really lost in the relationship and the fact that they're trying to fill an hour every week. And
in The Walking Dead, I found myself rooting for characters to die.
Yeah.
I'm like, I've had 7 years of you. You can move on.
Yeah, but
Something
Stars
right
really did a great job with casting that show. You know, with Bruce Campbell. And Dana De Lorenzo, Ray Santiago, really, really fun cast, and then bringing back some original characters. And that's what I love about that show.
That is pretty much Star's main offering in the horror world. I did research that a new one's coming out called Shining Veil. So there's a little hope for Stars. Shining Veil is going to star Courtney Cox as a novelist who moves into a home that has troubled past.
I like that.
Haven't heard that before, huh? But interestingly enough, Greg Kinnear is going to be her husband in it.
Okay.
And I guess she may be doing some extramarital stuff behind his back. And then people are wondering if she's going crazy or actually seeing whatever she's seeing. I'm looking forward to seeing Courtney Cox in another horror outside of Scream because I can't really think of any other off the top of my head.
No, neither can I. And I'm a really big fan of Greg Kinnear. I mean, that guy picks some solid projects.
He does. He was the Soup guy initially, right? Or am I crazy? He wasn't the Soup guy? Didn't he do the Soup before, Joel McHale?
I
thought he was the Soup guy. I don't know. Perhaps we're wrong. I'm wrong on that. But anyways, you got a decent cast. Shining Veil has a little bit of hope, but still, Stars is coming in second to last. Then, as we noted before, there's Paramount. Did Paramount come out before Peacock or after Peacock? You know?
That's funny. You know, I think they had announced it, but CBS had its own platform that merged.
That's right, All Access for a while.
CBS All Access technically came out first.
Way before Peacock. Good point.
And then with Paramount, they were able to basically expand their entire library. So not only do they have some original content on there, we were talking about Twilight Zone. Sorry, Twilight Zone.
Twilight Zones.
Yeah. And something else that we probably could have thrown into this category because it was a CBS, but this kind of falls before Paramount, was the updated version of The Twilight Zone hosted by Jordan Peele.
Yeah, there was a lot of hype about that. It got 2 seasons, right?
Yes,
and
2
then
seasons.
Just chorped.
I believe so. And that may have happened with the merging of Paramount. That may have...
that could make sense. Plus, I think Jordan Peele maybe even stretching himself a little too thin at that point, maybe, when he was being the host of Twilight Zone as well as producing and directing other fare.
Yeah.
But you're right. Yeah, Paramount does have some decent horror offerings. One of those not being World War Z, which was supposed to be one of their flagships.
Yeah.
It's a shame that it was executed so
Damn
poorly.
shame.
The first scene's amazing in it, but yeah, it goes off the rails, sadly.
Yeah.
Um,
But we didn't talk about the original program on Paramount that we will reference, and that is The Stand.
That's right.
The Stephen King, a second time adapted book, The Stand.
So I think CBS actually did have the rights to The Stand back in the 90s when you had the TV miniseries with Rob Lowe in it.
Oh, interesting.
The initial The Stand. So I think they just retained the rights to The Stand. I know there was a lot of hubbub for a while that it was going to come out as a film and that Ben Affleck was attached to it. I guess that all just kind of fell apart when
Ben Affleck
didn't
as
do as well.
The Flag character, or
I think he was going to direct it.
Oh,
I know he's going
okay.
to direct it. I don't remember if he was going to be in it, but I know he initially was going to direct a reincarnation of The Stand. But instead we got this CBS All Access, I think is what it was initially released on, and now is on Paramount. And sadly on Rotten Tomatoes, it's coming in at a 55. But I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the cast. I thought they had
Me too.
Picked some really good actors.
Yeah, I agree. I love Skarsgård as our main villain here.
He's great. That guy's great.
He's always ominous too. That's why I like it when he kind of sticks with the scarier parts.
Yeah.
I couldn't go to see him as Tarzan because it just
no, never.
I don't know. I couldn't root for him and
never
in that way. I want to see him being ominous, as he does so well in True Blood as well. But yeah, it had a great cast. Whoopi Goldberg as our Oracle character,
That's right.
essentially.
That's right.
Matrix sort of ripped off. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, Greg Kinnear.
And Greg Kinnear as well.
Greg Kinnear. There you go. There's your connection.
Definitely.
And, a really great job casting the dog character. Loved the dog. Forget the dog's name.
I love the dog. The dog and the wolf in it too is pretty scary. When that wolf gets up into Whoopi's face.
Oh man, yeah, that's true.
Yikes! Yeah, those of you rooting against Whoopi in this last controversy this previous week might enjoy that scene especially. Well, yeah, I think The Stand is such a massive story to tell that there's always going to be weak moments in any sort of visual interpretation of it. And it's not fluidly amazing, but there are some bright spots. And were you to compare it to the 90s version, I think it's heads and tails better.
Sure. Yeah. And I believe that, the original one aired on basic cable and couldn't do as much,
I might be crazy, but I want to say that original one did air on CBS.
I think
with
you're right.
Miniseries like they used to do. They had I think it was the Tommy Knockers back in the day. They did it with
the Langoliers
initially. The Langoliers.
Langoliers.
Oh my goodness.
I mean,
remake the Langoliers.
Yeah, remake the Langoliers. I remember that being like a.
So in that sense, it was tamed down. We get a lot more grizzle here in this one. There's a lot more gore and grizzle. I think I heard it stays truer to the novel, which I read half of. It's just so long. I'll admit that was what I picked up at the beginning of the COVID pandemic. I'm
Is that right?
Oh, this will be fun. And then it's really stopped being fun pretty quick.
Yeah.
As COVID got worse and worse. So, yes.
I will say this about Paramount. Don't count them out just yet. I know that they've got the new Halo series coming. They've got the new Godfather series coming. And I think they're going to, with those, bigger flagship shows, they'll be able to trickle some of that money down into some original horror. So, we might be having a different conversation in a year or two from now.
They might rally. And they might rally and overtake our next one.
Right.
Which...
Right.
I got a list here of their horror, but I really haven't followed through on any of them.
No.
Amazon Prime is lacking in original horror.
They really are. They really are. I would say that they've probably focused more on original horror films than series. Right. I don't know if that's just like a massive demographic thing that they don't think, that horror would do as well, but. Again, they just dumped a ton of money into the Lord of the Rings here, so who knows?
That's true. Yeah, they might have seeded other genres to other platforms almost. And I think Prime is really trying to be like the fantasy platform between the Wheel of Time and now, as you mentioned, the Ring of Power. And maybe they think they're trying to find their niche, because as far as Prime offerings, we have The Feed, which I haven't seen, which involves some sort of brain chip where people are able to hack into your brain and ultimately make you do things you don't want to do. Man in the High Castle. Have you tried that one?
You know what? I have seen that first season and I did not love it.
Would you consider it horror even? Because it is in the...
I think, there are some horrific things going on. I wouldn't necessarily classify it as horror, though. No.
And this is where the Nazis have won the war, an alternate timeline.
Yes.
Okay, that in itself is horrific, certainly.
Absolutely. That's what I was getting at.
Then Electric Dreams, which is an anthology, but it seems more sci-fi-y than horror.
Yeah,
have you dabbled in any of that? Because it had great casts.
No, but there's a big name behind it, too. Isn't there, as far as like the creator?
Is it Philip K. Dick stories? I want to say it's Philip K. Dick. No, it's not Philip K. Dick.
I'm just trying to think maybe like a bigger director than a producer.
Okay. For some reason, I want to say that it might have to do with Philip K. Dick's short stories, and they've adapted a bunch of his, who's essentially our Blade Runner guy.
Right.
And I Dream of Electric Sheeps was the initial novel for Blade Runner. I think he's affiliated with Electric Dreams. I've tried a couple of the episodes, and they just weren't sticking with me. I had trouble like caring about the characters. Yeah. And then finally, Lore.
Lore is a really great podcast. And I think the problem is if you were a podcast fan, you've already been through those stories. And when I think what they tried to do, Aaron Mahnke, the creator and producer behind it, putting visuals to the stories is entertaining, but is it enough if I've already heard you tell the stories? Maybe my images in my head are better than the ones that you picked. So
I hadn't actually listened to the podcast, and I was not impressed with the first couple episodes that I watched. It felt like unsolved mysteries the way some of these were staged.
I think it feels more just like as a historical documentary series instead of a horror series, which is what they're branding it and marketing it as.
Right. And there's one you mentioned just now that I hadn't heard of.
Yeah, this one, Soldiers or Zombies, in the English pronunciation of it, I came across as a new Amazon original, and I tried the first episode, and it just seemed like a very low budget, back when sci-fi was making like not as good quality as they are now, when they were like some bad special effects, and some of the character actors weren't doing it for me. It certainly wasn't enough for me to say, well, maybe I'll give the season a go. So it was a miss for me. And then they also added one of the first shots you see is a zombie moving in the desert, and it just seems like they sped up the footage really quick, and I was not impressed.
So they're waffling between whether or not to go with Night of the Living Dead or 28 Days Later, Speed Zombies.
They just took it to a different digital look to it. It's no good. So sorry, Prime.
So in a sense, sorry, Prime. At least I watched something through on Paramount, even though we're ranking it below because it doesn't have as much to offer. At least I got through one of Paramount's horrors, Prime. Jeez Louise. All the money in the world, and Prime's just like ignoring us.
They've got some work to do. And I'll tell you this much. They just ran the price up again on Amazon.
Yeah.
Give me my horror if you're going to crank up my prices.
Well, I mean, Mr. Bezos does need that money.
Well, yeah.
So it does make sense.
Needs to find another Earth.
I refuse to call him Bezos. He's Bezos.
Bezos is fine.
Next on the list. So essentially we are at 1, 2, 3. The fourth best is the way to look at this one. And they're, I think, the second newest. I think Peacock maybe came out after them, but Apple TV.
Yeah.
It's not ignoring the horror.
Apple TV is doing a really great job on original programming. I mean, unlike the other platforms that we just mentioned who are kind of building up a library of older content, I think Apple's actually putting the money into really good stories.
I completely agree. Specifically in one case, which would rival any of the shows on any of the platforms, no matter where they sit, and that's Servant, which I am absolutely enthralled with.
I am already a
As
season in. I was pulled right into that. That's one of those shows where I put on the first episode and then I realized I was like almost done with season one. Those
you know,
episodes, they move quickly too.
they do. It's almost like they put a spell on you
Yes,
themselves. They're
yes,
hypnotic. It's M. Night coming back with the vengeance, if you ask
yeah,
me. And I think we've mentioned this before, but I just think he does better with the long form.
yeah,
And I think this is a great opportunity for him to make his trademark twists have more resonance than they might in something like Old
sure.
or even Sixth Sense, which I feel is a little overrated. Good stuff,
Uh,
but overrated.
And Servant's
Um,
already on season 3. Is that right?
it is. It
Okay.
just started season 3. I am one of those guys that likes to mass episodes before I watch them, so I'm gonna have to wait till 3 or 4 come out before I'm gonna feast on them. Otherwise, that sort of a show on a weekly basis would drive me bananas
Yeah.
because I'm so curious about what's gonna happen next.
Mm.
Another one that I really love the production value on, and I wanted to like it so much more from Apple TV, was Stephen King's Lisey's Story.
Okay.
Have you seen
I
any
have
of this?
not yet. No.
Okay. Great cast. You got Jennifer Jason Leigh again, which we always see popping up in these horrors. And then of course Julianne Moore is our lead as Lisey.
Okay.
And I couldn't get on board with her plight. It's essentially about grief. She's lost her husband, who is a horror writer himself, and I know that this is supposedly Stephen King's most personal novel, and he wrote it after I think he was in a car accident, and everyone thought he was going to die, and it was the first thing he
Oh,
wrote
okay.
after his wife had pretty much started assuming he wasn't going to come back and had like changed things in his room.
Interesting.
Like almost kind of like been ready to move on from him, which kind of freaked him out. So I think it's really personal to him. I don't think it hits as hard as some of his other horror because it's more of like a ethereal horror in a weird way. There is monstrous things that happen in it and monstrous figures, and there's this really creepy killer in it as well. But I just found it really slow and plodding. It didn't move at a pace that I enjoyed. I did get through it because I will say again, the production value was amazing. It was beautiful to just look at.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things I think like I should have been multitasking and just had it on the background because you could get up, walk away for 10 minutes and nothing would have happened.
Gotcha.
You know?
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, tell me, have you started The Invasion yet? Because
I watched all of Invasion.
Okay.
And it's very unremarkable.
Okay.
And I was so disappointed because I'm one of the biggest Sam Neill fans out there.
He's fantastic. And
absolutely
everything.
Adore Sam Neill. Everything he's in. Dead Calm, probably my favorite performance of his next to Jurassic Park, of course, but he's way more in Dead Calm. He's the spoiler alert, he's only in the first episode.
Oh,
so
man. That's trickery.
Here.
I don't care for that.
Yeah. What sucks is his character was really interesting, too. I guess there's at least the potential for him to come back if there's more seasons, but I don't think it did very well. I know it got really poor reviews. It's only at 47 on Rotten Tomatoes right now. I love alien stuff too.
I know you do.
But a lot of the critics are just mentioning like people be ripping out their hair waiting for anything interesting to happen again. Similar to Lisey's story, you have there's beautiful backdrops. It's an international tale too. You got 5 main characters across the entire globe dealing with this. But I hate to say, I watched every episode. I barely remember what happened. And I recently watched this too. Like I am struggling to like,
that's too bad.
Even pluck a single scene that hit home because it was unremarkable. It missed for me.
That's a shame.
And I try to like most alien fare too.
Right.
Fire in the Sky is just ingrained in my brain for all of time, but Invasion not so much.
Well, like the others are like Paramount, I think Apple TV will surprise us with even more horror.
Yes, if you were to put your money on one going forward to raise in the ranks, who would you put it on?
Paramount.
Apple or Paramount? You put it on Paramount.
Yeah, just because I think Paramount has has that audience already built in.
That's true.
And
they have a history with horror in a way that Apple doesn't.
Yeah, and Apple, I mean, their biggest success right now, or one of them, is Ted Lasso. So you probably see them doubling more down on comedy because they've
family comedies.
Yeah, they brought in a big amount of audiences because people are like, oh, you got to see Ted Lasso. I came here for Ted Lasso. What else do you have like Ted Lasso?
Right. They can make soccer appealing to Americans.
Impressive.
They're doing something right with the comedy. But yeah, for me, Servant is holding Apple up in the ranks. But it's still not the top 3. Let's start delving into our top 3 here. Next on the list,
Hulu.
Hulu, baby.
Hulu, when we started researching here, I thought Hulu was gonna have even more, but it's in our top 3, so it's certainly not in the top 2. And it's because I know I've seen Castle Rock, which I love. I've seen The Terror, which I believe was originally on AMC, but I think, it found its success on Hulu. And let me just jump back to Castle Rock really quick because...
Please do, because I need you to sell it to me, because I want to get into it. I've only seen the first episode, and I was a little bored.
Okay.
So I know I got to go back. Because I love that it's Stephen King's world, right? It's the Kingverse.
And I think that is one of the most interesting things about this series, especially in season 1. They do such a good job of planting all these Easter eggs for you to pick up, You've got one of the characters is Jack Torrance's niece.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, it's those little things like that. They reference dairy. They, I think they even... I haven't rewatched it. I'd probably rewatch it, but they reference dairy, and I think they even mention like the clown. I don't think they say Pennywise, but I think that they allude to it. And it's just like they lay all these Easter eggs down there for you to find. And again, fantastic actors in this series as well. I mean, Bill Skarsgård in season 1, Lizzie Kaplan in season 2.
Is it a fluid narrative,
no,
or is it more anthology style?
It's more anthology style because season 1 deals with a story that takes place. Oh, also in Shawshank, which is another Stephen King reference. And season 2 is about Annie Wilkes, who we know.
Plays by Lizzie Kaplan, right?
Played by Lizzie Kaplan, and that's what we focus on there. So the thing that's tying these stories together is that they take place within not only Stephen King's world, but the town of Castle Rock.
So it's the coming up of Annie Wilkes, right? As a nurse.
Correct. This is an origin story, like how could someone turn into the Kathy Bates character that it's
maniacal fan.
Yeah, kind of reminds you, like season 1 kind of reminds me of the nurse in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I think
Nurse Ratched.
Yeah. So Lizzie Kaplan's performance as a young, let's not even say Annie Wilkes, but a young Kathy Bates is so good.
I believe it. I mean, I loved Lizzie Kaplan as far back as Cloverfield, right? She's one of the girls in Cloverfield. So she knows how to do horror. But in that, of course, she was more of the victim. It sounds like here she's more of the oppressor.
Yeah. I think they also reference Jerusalem's Lot while it's fresh in my mind. It's just like, I think there's just a really fun... Stephen King created this amazing universe, and why not set stories within it,
It's funny that you bring that up because we did kind of neglect Epix, which has just released Jerusalem's Lot.
Chapelwaite.
Chapelwaite, yes. I didn't really. I'm only a little into it, but I'm a little bored.
Well, I don't know what episode you're on. I haven't seen all of season 1. I had like Epix was like advertising like for the weekend, and we started watching it, and it took a while to get into. But then once you start to realize,
really,
yeah. I mean, I would like to at least finish season 1.
Fair. I know there's going to be a season 2, so I know I should go back to it.
There you go. And I love Adrian Brody.
Me too. Yeah. I actually do. I think he's great and everything. So, I'm with you.
But yeah,
I'll go back. So Epix, you know what? You're doing better than Peacock, I guess.
seriously. I mean, Epix could have just knocked Peacock out of here, and
we should note we're not bringing up Shudder into this at all.
no,
and that's
Shudder's an
obviously
obvious
pure horror.
Yeah, Shudder it's prime.
Do they make TV series though?
Yeah, they do have a couple original series. Yes, I think some of them are reality based, and I think a couple of them are narratives.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I think there's a family of like slashers or something.
Fair.
I'll have to look that up.
Let's bounce back to Hulu though. Monsterland is its third highest rated, with a Rotten Tomatoes score of 82, which is another anthology.
Which I haven't watched, but yeah, I was going to say I remember some people talking about it, and I remember them saying that it kind of deals with some more realistic, like horrific events too, like giving up a child, and I think some people might have an issue with it, like with trigger warning stuff, like yeah. So I'm curious about Monsterland. I haven't jumped into it because I like my shows to escape me from the world and not
yes, force you to face hard truths.
Yes,
and such.
Yeah,
I hear you there. Another anthology on Hulu, though, that I have seen a lot of and I actually really like is Into the Dark. And it's got a much lower score in Rotten Tomatoes than Monsterland, which actually makes me want to see some Monsterland.
Yeah, that's interesting.
But Into the Dark has had some really fun ones. I know I mentioned the one last week with Judy Greer with her dog that like kills people that do her wrong. But there's one that really stuck out to me as being super scary, and it's I'm effing with you is what it's called.
Okay.
And it's about this like online troll that shows up at the city motel, and the guy who runs the motel F's with him to the nth degree. And every time he does something absolutely horrific, he just brushes it off with, I'm just effing with you. As he's like killed,
that's
friends
fun.
and family.
I like that.
The guy who plays this maniacal owner of the motel is amazing. He's very scary. Like when we're talking about spine chinglers, because we've been neglecting the spine, this guy alone is getting me up into that C quadrant.
Wow.
He's got that 27, 28 out of the 33 spine tinglers just
on his performance
in
alone.
His character and performance. Because
it's just a lot.
Yeah, what he does to this guy is pretty bad. Pretty bad. And it's all rooted in reality. There's no supernatural stuff. And as you talked about before, that's the sort of thing that really hits home. If you come across one of these nutballs in the world that just likes to puppet master you in the way that this guy does, there's nothing scarier than that.
Seriously.
And then finally on Hulu, American Horror Stories, which is the anthology version of American Horror Story, which is now on its 12th, 13th season or whatever.
Right. Which American Horror Stories,
I thought it was fun.
Yeah, does a great job of a truncated story, not having to deal with the crazy story arc of a full season that American Horror Story has to deal with. But
right. Yeah, they don't meander in the way that some of the seasons do.
Correct. Yeah, they can get away
have
with a lot
tangential
more
stuff that doesn't really jive with the whole.
Right.
American Horror Stories are concise. The ones that I've watched are super gory too.
Same.
Much more than American Horror Story, I would even say.
Right.
What they do with some of it. So, and I know as a cinephile too, I love the episode set at the drive-in theater where
that was a great episode.
There's a movie that messes almost archive
episodes
81-ish in the sense that it's a video that changes the person that watches.
That's a great point. Yeah, it sets them off, into a murderous rampage, like almost like a zombie outbreak.
I just love the setting of drive-in theaters too. That's why I'm so excited for this next Jurassic Park. I haven't watched any of the previews for it, but I know there's a scene at the drive-in with the T-Rex, and I'm just champing at the bit, baby.
Yeah, that just makes sense.
I think that kind of covers Hulu. Let's bounce to our runner-up.
Man, HBO, especially now that it's HBO Max with Warner Brothers backing too, they have put out some really good stuff.
Can you explain to me the Max and HBO Max? Why do they add that Max? What does that mean?
HBO Max isn't just original HBO series anymore. HBO Max includes other Warner Brother archives.
Okay.
That's why there's a ton of DC content on there. Like if you want to watch any, you know, Justice League animated series, you can go on to HBO.
Do they got Swamp Thing?
Honestly, I think that's the only one that isn't on there, and I really wanted to watch Swamp Thing, and
I've watched a few of the episodes. It's really fun,
and I was discouraged.
It's really great,
when
especially the creature design.
Yeah, and Derek Mears is such a great character. I mean, he's played Jason Voorhees and Swamp Thing.
But it has nothing. It didn't buy Cinemax or anything. Is Cinemax still a thing?
No, Cinemax is still. It's always been owned by HBO.
Oh, really? Okay.
And some of Cinemax original content's on there as well. Like the show The Nick, I believe, was an original Cinemax show. But let's talk about. It's so funny. One of the common threads across all these platforms is a Stephen King story, and HBO's Outsider is just that. And the thing I loved about Outsider was that. First of all, Jason Bateman scooped up those rights and was able to produce, direct, act in it. And it's one of the better, police procedurals meets horror meets sci-fi stories I've ever seen.
I wholly agree. It is hard for me to watch police procedurals as a whole.
Same.
But this one, just the premise of the doppelganger.
Yeah.
Doppelganger stuff is so hard to pull off well. And this one is like the best at it.
Yeah.
And I'm glad to hear that Jason Bateman was the man on that. I was very lucky enough to be an extra on Arrested Development. And Jason Bateman, I was in the Not a Pussy episode at the Church and State Fair. Jason Bateman was so cool. He came up to me while we were just standing around and tried to shoot the shit with me. But I was 24 at the time and completely ridiculous and silly that I really didn't take advantage of the opportunity like I should have. But I've met the man in person and he's a gem.
Yeah.
He is a gem.
I've heard that. And man, that guy, as funny as he is, can really do some good drama. I mean, I'm not just talking about Outsider. I'm talking about Ozark, which is on a different platform. But I thought Outsider was one of those shows that was done so well that, obviously it's not, I don't believe it's going to have a sequel. I don't know anything about that or how they would pull that off, but
it might with the end though, right? I mean, there's a very interesting little end piece to it.
Yes. And that's just it though. I don't know if they're going to do they need to, they could, sure. But do they need to, do they want to? But that was one of my favorite shows in the last couple of years.
I completely agree. I think they would be silly not to bring it back because it does have the highest of the horror ratings, with the exception of one of their comedy horrors, which we'll talk about at the very end.
Yeah.
It has a 91 on Rotten Tomatoes, and that's pretty darn good when you got a cop show that you're talking about. Yeah. How many other cop shows, granted cops and doppelgangers, make it that high above the 90s? So, okay, but here's the question for you, because it does have supernatural elements. How spine tingly was it for you? Where we hit? How high is it getting up on that spinal column?
It wasn't as spine tingling to me. It was. Man, that's a really good question. I'm almost like shooting in the middle of the spine there.
I think it's even a little bit more, even though it is supernatural for me, only because I love the premise of not really knowing if the person is who you think they are.
Yes. I was going to say there's more like the mystery of it that really just like pulled me in. Sure, there's some creepy stuff in it and spine tingling stuff. The messed up faces. I might just need to rewatch
Supernatural, that. It was up there in spine tingly for me. Maybe not quite to the C1 through 7, but it's definitely hitting those T-bones, those T vertebrae.
T vertebrae for sure.
And then, of course, one of their older offerings for horror is Room 104. Have you seen a lot of Room 104?
I have not, and I've heard.
I have seen the first 2 seasons, and I love it.
Yeah, I was going to say, is Mark Duplass the producer behind that?
Yes, both the Duplass are involved in it heavily. They're not all horror episodes though, so ultimately it's fixed on one location at this kind of seedy motel outside of the airport, where you see all these really interesting stories that happen within this one room at the hotel on the first floor, 104. But the episodes that are horror are the best of them, because there's definitely drama ones, pseudo comedies and thrillery stuff, but the horror ones really hit home. Granted, I haven't seen season 3 and 4, only 1 and 2, but 1 is called Ralphie, that involves this little demon child. It's not actually a demon child, just this kid who messes with his babysitter to the nth degree, and that really stuck with me. There's another great episode in that first season that involves cults too. So
big fan of cults.
It's probably one of my favorite anthologies out there right now. I'm not sure if it's still going, but yeah, I think you'd enjoy it. And it's got 88 on Rotten Tomatoes too. So
yeah,
people are liking it.
All right. Let me ask you this. Speaking of one of their older series, were you a big True Blood guy?
I was a big True Blood fan. I mean, this was post Buffy. I needed any sort of vampire fare I could get after Buffy withdrawals. It was super cheesy. It was super soap opera-y. There were times that really bothered me, but as a whole, I really liked the social commentary that was going on underneath it. I thought it almost did some of that better than Buffy, in the way that every kind of thread had a analog in the real world. And I liked the majority of the performers in it a lot. And I liked that you got to see different sort of beings as well. Like you had the transmogrifiers and the witches.
That's a good point. Yeah.
It had such a fleshed out world for me. And of course it's from Alan Ball, who, you know, before the spaciness, I used to love American Beauty, and in 6 Feet Under, he had a hand in. So I felt like he was really pulling out all the stops with it. Granted, it only has a 70 on Rotten Tomatoes. So how about you? Did you like it?
It's one of those shows that I remember watching the first season and being really into it, but I don't remember why. I think it's because I just didn't have HBO a lot back then. This is before like the platforms. You had to have it as part of like your subscription. I remember when it was like, you kind of just had to call the cable company and say, I want to add HBO. We just didn't always have it. And I'm kind of curious when that premiered. It seems older than it is, or maybe it is. But I mean, I'm a huge fan of vampires, and I know it's on that list of mine that I'm like, I've got to go back and finish it, because I really did enjoy what I saw.
Again, in terms of the vampire aspects of it, Skarsgård is the highlight. I wasn't a huge fan of her main romantic lead, Bill, the Bill character. Didn't really do it for me.
Anna Paquin,
not my favorite.
Yeah.
And I like Anna Paquin sometimes, and not others. And this was one of those middling times where sometimes she brought it, sometimes she didn't. But the supporting characters in it are really strong.
Yeah.
Like her buddy Sam, who is he can turn into anything, is a transmogrifier, I guess, not just aware. He's like aware anything or whatever. He was really good. I'd like to see him do more stuff. But when it does kind of go off the rails is when they start to bring in fairy stuff. It turns out that Sookie is actually part fairy. And I think it's interesting, the idea of fairies being evil.
Sure, if you're going to put a spin on them, like don't make them the obvious.
But I'd suggest Buffy over True Blood. But once you've watched Buffy and you need more, I think True Blood is pretty darn good.
Yeah.
You know what? Just to backtrack 1 second here, we did skip out on a vampire one on Hulu called Nosferatu. Another one I tried and I couldn't get into.
Yeah, I never, I guess never had the urge to throw it on. Yeah.
And then back to HBO. Just 2 nights ago, I tried to give this show a shot because I hadn't heard of it. Granted, it is a BBC pickup for HBO. It's called The Fades.
Okay.
Have you heard of it?
No.
I'm not a fan. It just feels really dated. It's about a kid who ultimately can see ghosts, pretty much.
Okay.
It didn't do much for me. And then we want to go really early in the days of quality HBO. We mentioned Carnival.
Yeah.
For those of you who haven't seen Carnival, get to seeing it.
Yeah. It's one of those shows, you know, came out, I think, right before Deadwood, or maybe right around the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And HBO just didn't have the reach. And no one was watching it.
Right.
And I think they just didn't have the numbers. Otherwise, I think it would have gone on for many, many seasons.
I think so too. And for those of you who are huge fans of the Dexter revival, our big bad in that, you know his name, Clancy something.
Clancy Brown.
Clancy Brown is the kind of scary main priest in Carnival, who's not really a priest for the good side of things. It's very interesting.
Yeah, definitely worth watching. Yeah.
So that was our number 2.
Yeah, I was just going to throw one more into there. That was Lovecraft Country, which unfortunately did not get picked up for a second season. But
why not?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. The cast was fantastic. The story was intriguing. It kind of shifts from horror to sci-fi. The pilot episode of Lovecraft was so much fun. If you're a horror fan, you would love the pilot episode. But now it's almost like, I mean, yes, watch it, but knowing it doesn't get picked up it's a little hard to.
Oh, that's frustrating.
Yeah.
And that has the main character is our new big bad in the MCU, right?
Correct. Jonathan
Krang
Majors.
The Conqueror?
Jonathan Majors is his real name. Yeah.
I wonder, do you think maybe it had something to do with him suddenly getting this windfall from Marvel?
No, I don't think so. I think it was actually a pretty important show for him as far as just even representation and the time it takes place. They shot it in Chicago too, and they shot it in Pilsen and around Illinois, but they shot it in Pilsen, and they made Pilsen look like old downtown Chicago. It's really well done. Cool. Like the art department, like everyone nailed the look. I think Jordan Peele was a producer on it. It had all the right ingredients. I just don't know what happened.
Huh. Well, that's a darn shame. But I am looking forward to seeing him be evil as Kang the Conqueror. So
yeah, great actor.
If there's any, what do you call that? Compensation prize or the like. So let's talk about our top dog, and that's just by sheer volume alone too. And granted, they have some of the best, most horrific offerings out there. Netflix takes the cake.
Yeah, I mean these executives over at Netflix pretty much invented binge watching. You know, like they did. They started it, and they started it with Stranger Things. I would argue that was like the first show that really kicked off. Here are all the episodes at once. Watch them all right now. Enjoy it.
In the horror genre, I completely agree, but I think it was a House of Cards where people had to watch it all immediately.
Yeah.
I don't like he who shall not be spoken of.
Yeah.
Was the star. That guy. House of Cards. But I agree. Stranger Things really kind of like, I feel like made horror kind of cool and trendy and, brought it into the
It's like a love letter, it's like a love letter, like the time it takes place in. It just had everything. It has everything. And I think the biggest problem is the fact that they've never been able to consistently put out a season after season with just gaps in between, which is extremely frustrating. You almost need to get hype yourself up again to watch it, even though you will, and you'll love it. It's discouraging. But I think that opens a lot of doors. Why does it
only have an 83 then? Why does it only have an 83 on Rotten Tomatoes? You'd think Stranger Things would be in the 90s.
You would think that. If I had to say it, it's because maybe some people think the story's being stretched out too long. I guess Bob got killed. I mean, Sean Astin. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I loved all 3 seasons, but I will say that season 2 was a lull for me, as often is the case in any series. Season 2, it's like they don't know exactly what direction, how to make it new and still feel the same. I felt like they struggled with that in season 2, but season 3 knocked it out of the park for me. Not quite as good as 1 because it had that novelty, but I was just so happy to see Winona Ryder back in the game and kicking ass.
Yeah, seriously.
That's always going to have a special place in my heart, that show. And I can't wait for season 4.
Yeah.
Another one. Oh, actually, we wanted to mention this. The 3 top horror in terms of ratings on Netflix are all foreign horror.
That's interesting. That is really interesting. Yes.
I mean, I probably should have looked at how many people actually were voting and all that stuff, which is based on the root numbers. We have Hellbound, Kingdom, and Squid Game with 97, 96, and a 94 respectively. I know you've seen Squid Game.
Yes.
You do consider that horror, don't you?
Yes, I think
I do.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, I was on the edge of my seat during the entirety of that show.
Yeah, it was great, and like the horrors that humans do to each other. You know, it's
yes, it felt like it could happen. And granted, this is not the most original storyline. Go all the way back to like Running Man, I
Right.
guess you could say, another
Right.
Stephen King that involved in the Hunger Games. But I think it does it the best, only because it really focuses on class
Yeah.
class warfare. And
Yeah.
I was just enthralled throughout the entirety of it. That doll statue still haunts me.
Yeah, we'll have to do an episode just on foreign horror and what
That's a good idea.
other countries get right.
Right.
I mean, clearly they're doing something right. I mean, the numbers are right there, and I'm a big fan. I haven't seen Hellbound yet, but I've heard.
I have.
Yeah,
And that, interestingly, is the #1 rated horror on Netflix right now.
that's crazy.
With a 97. And it's a great concept, but I found the CGI kind of cheesy, enough cheesy to like bring it way down on the spine tingler column. Because are you familiar with the premise?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Ultimately, you got people who have been marked for hell, right? And then there's these 3 huge, bulking demons that come and bring you down, and everyone assumes that the people that are getting chosen to go to hell have done horrible things. And at first, there you can kind of like see that that's the case, but then the things start coming for babies,
and then
and it gets a little
wrong.
more.
The innocent.
Like, is this maybe gonna be Hitler down the line? Yeah, I liked it. I got through it fairly quick, but having watched that after Squid Game, I didn't think it was even in the same ballpark in terms of scare factors. So
I'm going to give a shout out to one of the shows on here on this list that I think also was like ended not abruptly, but maybe just too soon. But that was Santa Clarita Diet, and I loved this show.
Me too.
I loved the ridiculous concept. I mean, just when you think the zombie idea has been just pounded into the ground or beaten, those little, maybe it's the characters that bring them life, but Drew Barrymore was so funny in this.
So good.
Timothy Olyphant was really great. The neighbor kid was awesome. The daughter, everybody on this show was great.
The neighbor kid and the daughter, thankfully, we still get to see in really good shows, respectively.
That's true.
The neighbor kid is in Righteous Gemstones. I'm not sure if he's in season 2. I haven't started it yet, but he's a huge player in that first one.
Yeah.
And then in Yellow Jackets on Showtime.
I haven't watched that show yet, but yeah, I've heard
we
many
have
good
the
things.
Daughter, who's almost unrecognizable compared to what she looked like in Santa Clarita, but just a great, really deep character there too. And there's some really horrific things that happen to her. That's another way. I guess we kind of forgot about Showtime, but I would argue that Yellow Jackets does have some horror elements. Yeah. And it's one of my favorite shows right now by a lot. Okay. So just a quick call out to Showtime.
I think Santa Clarita just needed one more season to wrap things up. And I get like bummed when they just,
I agree with you.
They had the money. It's not that. What is it?
I think. Are you sure? You don't think it was like the demands of the top dogs? Maybe. I mean, Drew Barrymore now as that host, the new Ellen or whatever, where she sure is a big version of herself as herself. Have you been watching any of the Drew Barrymore show?
No, I don't.
She's pretty big in it. I didn't realize she was that big. She's Drew Barrymore.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I mean, I liked everything about Santa Clarita, and I completely agree. I wanted to see more of Nathan Fillion's decapitated head.
Oh my God!
So
he was so
that's
great.
a bummer.
We'd
be remiss to not mention all of Flanagan's good stuff.
I was just going to say,
outside of the foreign horror, those are the ones that are getting a top dollar in terms of Rotten Tomato. Yeah. Of the 3, what's your favorite? You got Haunting of Hill House, Haunting of Bly Manor, Midnight Mass.
Okay, I think Haunting of Hill House out of the 3
by far.
Then Midnight Mass, then Bly.
I thought Midnight Mass order.
Midnight Mass had such a great original idea. I mean, the parallels between vampires and the Bible,
and
Catholics. It was so.
I was raised Catholic, so I can say that.
Same here. Same here.
They tend to suck you dry.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
I mean, just Just the idea though of rebirth and I mean the things and let's talk about spine chilling on Midnight Mass. That main vampire, when you there's some scenes just of him even flying that gave me
Oh
the
my
creeps.
goodness. Yes, yes. He's horrifying looking. The wings alone, as they just get. I mean, he's so freaky that like when he's feasting, people be just like, taking knives to his wings, and he doesn't care because he's so hungry for that blood.
Like,
I don't know.
Which I think, because of what you just said, there's room for a sequel to that. I don't know if that'll happen, but I could see that happening.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Granted, I think Flanagan is so prolific. I kind of want him to do something else. Maybe he can come back to that.
But did we need? No, I mean, did we need Haunting of Bly Manor? I mean,
we didn't need that.
Exactly, because Hill House was so good, and that one, some of the ghosts hiding in the background of that, like looking at a painting and finding something new every time, and just the spine chilling of those ghosts, I thought was really well done.
And the characters as a whole in Hill House are just so much more enjoyable to watch. Granted, the kid actors in Bly Manor, I think there's too much of them in it, but they're pretty good. You know what I mean? I feel like they were kind of the highlight performance-wise of that season. But as a whole, it wasn't scary to me.
Yeah, it wasn't. It was just really more like a gothic horror, like gothic romance, almost set in a horror like background. I don't know. I didn't dislike it. I just expected more because of Hill House. I wanted more scares.
I'm with you on that one. It was a letdown compared to Hill House. That's hard to follow up Hill House, though. One I want to mention that you hadn't seen, and I recently watched it because it's fairly new, is Brand New Cherry Flavor.
Okay,
set in the 90s Hollywood, where this up-and-comer female director has made this like short that's really horrific, and everybody's wanting to have a piece of her after that. But it's all an allegory for what happens to you when you get sucked into the Hollywood system.
Man.
But what happens to her is, I mean, there's a lot of supernatural stuff in it, but there's a lot of body horror too. For example, she makes a deal kind of with the devil, but not really. It's Catherine Keener. Close enough. And the side effects of the deal she makes is she literally barfs up kittens every once in a while.
What?
And it's just something you'd never ever would expect to happen. And then suddenly, she's barfing up a kitten right now. Okay, all right, we're gonna spend 5 minutes watching that happen. And I loved every second of the 5 minutes because I've never seen
that. I've never seen that
regularly from a very interesting actress too. I had never seen her before, but it's unlike anything you will ever see. It's very original. Brand New Cherry Flavor. So got 81 on Rotten Tomatoes, which is pretty darn good.
I'll watch it.
I highly suggest it. And then I've only seen one season of Slasher. Have you watched any of those?
Yeah, I have, and it seemed more like someone wanted to try to create their own like Scream franchise, which is interesting because I believe Scream on MTV was happening at the same time as this came out.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Which the first 2 seasons of the Scream TV show are decent.
Okay.
The third one's off the rails. But I've only watched one episode or one season of Slasher, the Solstice season, and I liked it actually.
Okay.
I thought it was good. I got through it. There were some over the top moments. It's about like an apartment building where there was a death the year before, and everyone in the apartment building was like apathetic to that death happening. So then a year later, somebody's going around killing everyone in the apartment building.
So this wasn't the first season then? Was this?
This is the third season, I think. Solstice, and it was the first one that was directed through by one director. And it's the same guy who did Pie Wacket. If you've heard of that,
I have heard of that. Yeah,
about a girl who essentially wishes her mom dead. And I think he's a strong director, and he did well with the Solstice season. And the Killer's kind of interesting too because it has this. It is Scream-esque in that he does have a lot of black on, but then he's got this like neon face.
Yeah,
it's this neon mask face, which I found unique.
All right, I'll check that out as well.
Check out Brand New Cherry Flavor first, but
okay, all right. Were you a big Sabrina? I was trying to think of the full title. The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina.
The story with me and Sabrina is that I tried to get into it a couple times. And the first season's a little weak, but I eventually committed. I think it was during like a holiday season that I just binged the bulk of it.
Yeah.
And once I just committed, I'm like, all right, I'm gonna do a lot of laundry. I'll do some cleaning. And then
Yeah.
I liked it. The
Yeah.
characters are very endearing.
I
I
think
love
that's it,
the main girl. She's so good. But
Yeah.
and I love the aunts. The aunts are both really strong actresses.
Mm-hmm.
Is it as good as Buffy? No. Is it better
No.
than True Blood? Maybe. It's as good as True Blood, if you ask me.
Okay.
Especially just because it's more contemporary.
Um,
But there's weak points.
yeah, I think yeah, you're spot on, and I think I enjoyed Sabrina because I enjoyed the characters and the world. You know,
Yeah.
Greendale,
Yeah.
next to Riverdale, but
Right.
yeah, they were a fun bunch.
Yeah, I mean, it just was pretty to look at too. You know, it was fun. It was a fun show to watch.
Yeah, yeah. What do you think about this last one for Netflix that we'll talk about is I believe we're both watching it currently, and it's called All of Us Are Dead. And this is another foreign this is a South Korean TV show that even references Train to Busan, which I like that they they're well aware.
I liked that, but it does become a little redundant when it's like, this isn't a movie. We're not in a movie.
They
every other conversation.
Yeah. They do throw that in there a lot. They're like, man.
But similar to Sabrina, it's really enjoyable to just look at. There's so much going on in every frame, I feel like.
Well directed, well shot.
Well directed. Good production value.
Is there a butt
Great
there?
gore. Yes, there is a but. The but is that it's very repetitive.
Yeah.
And where they try to make up for that, because I've only gotten through 6.5 episodes of the 12, and it's already feeling repetitive. So I'm a little kind of, they better go different directions. But what I do find interesting is that they have a lot of different sub stories going on, and you're seeing the zombie invasion from multiple perspectives in a way you don't normally. Even The Walking Dead, I feel like it kind of sticks with a core group. This, at least, you see what's going on with like a senator and their issues with it, and whether or not they have power when zombies take over. And then you got like a cop still trying to do his cop thing while juggling a baby and a child.
I would say they're doing a really good job of what Game of Thrones was great at, and it was juggling a ton of characters over like a large, even though it's all happening within just like a matter of a couple days. That you're jumping back, you're almost forgetting some of the characters, and you're like, oh yeah, they're there too. And I think the thing I enjoy the most about it are just the kids. I think
the kids are great, and they're not super stock. At first, I was worried that these were just going to be your archetypal, okay, here's your jock, here's your nerd. But that's not the way it is at all.
You know what the thing I noticed the most about these kids, and this is definitely a cultural thing, is how affectionate they are. The way they interact with each other. I mean, you wouldn't see American kids like just even a couple of guys with their arms around each other or like a hand on another knee. And it's just, I think the world needs to see, or Americans need to see that, it's okay to have emotions. And I really appreciate that little, fly on the wall type of a thing where I'm seeing that this side of this culture.
That's a really good point. And you see teamwork, especially among juveniles, in a way you don't normally.
You do.
And granted, it does feel like they're doing a lot of the same things.
yeah.
Just in a different part of the school.
It's basically a bunch of kids in like escape rooms. They're going from one room to the next, trying to come up with the solution and how to do it. And it's team building. And I think if you were to look at this as I think around episode 5, 6, it sort of just hit me. And I thought, oh, this is exactly what this is. This is an older generation not caring about a younger generation. You see these politicians and you see these parents even who don't care about the world they're leaving behind. And I think, and I could be wrong, that that's what the creators are trying to show you, that whether it's a virus, I think they even reference COVID-19 in it.
They do.
Yeah.
About the quarantine days, how long it takes to quarantine.
Yeah. That they learn from it. But that's exactly what this is. They literally forgot about the kids at the high school. They're like, oh man, did anyone? They look around and they're like, where are all the kids? Oh, we forgot about them.
There's actually a quote in it that proves that you're spot on with this theory. One of the kids brings up the fact, it's all about whether or not you care more about wisdom or hope.
Yep.
And the children represent hope and the adults represent wisdom. And what's really more important in society?
Yeah, if older people die, we lose wisdom. And if younger people die, we lose hope. And yeah, that's great. And I think I'm just watching it from that point of view. And it's just kind of sad.
It is sad. It is. Yeah.
Global warming and everything that's being dumped on this generation that nobody who's in government now actually cares about.
True.
They'll deal with it.
It does well kind of focusing on how the virus comes about too in a way you don't normally see.
Yeah.
Which was interesting. Yeah. And like even the lovey-dovey stuff that does happen, I feel like is not super cliche. Amongst the kids, you would expect, I don't know. I thought they sent me a couple curveballs, and then I did not necessarily like how heavy-handed they pulled it off, but the girl who was kind of a classist and how she ultimately sabotages the guy who's with her, who she thinks is lower than her.
Right.
I thought that was really fun. Not fun, sad fun.
Course.
You know what I mean?
I know.
I didn't think she was that evil until it turned out she was.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen what happens to her. Or the teacher. Can you clue me in what happened? Because I know the teacher ran off with her. What happened with that teacher?
They haven't addressed.
Okay, haven't addressed that.
At least you don't see anything. Right. And I would say that they do a pretty good job of jumping back to try to tie something up. But, is it another zombie show? Yeah. Yeah, I've seen it a lot. They're definitely going with the Train to Busan, fast-moving zombies. And I think
if you're a zombie fan, you're going to love it.
Yeah.
That's just all there is to it.
And here's the thing is I just think it's really well written.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd agree with that. Solid leads, like you said. They're affectionate.
Yeah, you care about these kids. It's you worry about them.
So our champion is Netflix by like a mile.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a numbers game, man. They're just pumping them out there. And here's the thing, though. The smart thing that they're doing is they are pulling in from other countries. They're pulling in from Germany, France, South Korea, Mexico. And that's what these other platforms really aren't doing.
True. Yeah.
Certainly not Paramount.
Definitely not Paramount.
Yeah.
But very impressive. We did good.
Yeah. And there's
we were just going to mention really quick, where's the place to go for your comedy horror? There was only one title that we came across that had 100 on Rotten Tomatoes, and that's HBO's Spanish-speaking comedy horror Los Spookies,
which I believe is I don't know if it's produced by Fred Armisen, but he's definitely involved.
It looks great. I'm dying to see it. And second to that was your Ash versus the Evil Dead, which came in at a 99. So if you're those fans are super loyal to that.
And if we were covering other networks, we definitely would have talked about What We Do in the Shadows.
Oh my goodness, absolutely.
I mean,
which you can't find on Hulu.
Right, you can, but we had to have some sort of framework here. Otherwise, there's a lot of other horror out there, and we'll have to cover it in another episode.
Indeedly do. We're at over an hour.
So do all the things that we tell you to do all the time. Subscribe. Tell your friends about this, please. We'll see you next time.
Yes, farewell.